let's just start. So let's just brief on introductions. So I'll introduce myself. So my name is Marcin, and started the project in 2006. I've been here since 2006 on this land. This used to be a blank soybean field when we started. So all this infrastructure you see here, we're building. Actually, the plans are quite ambitious with all the construction work and all the buildings, build village construction set. We're actually aiming to make this a model prototype community. So we're actually considering grow. This is only 30 acres right now, but growing to about 1,000 acres. I don't know if it's going to be here. There's not like 1,000 acres around immediately next to us, but that's our plan, to create a real community that's a powerful example of what society can be. So this is an experiment. We're just starting the Future Builders Academy. And the idea there is, can we train people to design and build anything? To learn how to learn how to design and build anything, and then learn how to be a leader and a human, a good member of society, and all that. So the experiment is 4 years. Can we do that? Can we use advanced learning, rapid learning methods and things like we do here, which are rapid swarm builds and things like that? Can we do that? That's what I'm interested in, seeing if we can raise the bar for humanity. In terms of open source product, open source economy, that people collaborate on open innovation as a new way to doing economics as opposed to the proprietary economy. So that's my game and be part of this here for this brief time, the 14 days. The scope of this is to actually get the 720 square foot house, including all the systems, built using the modular build methods that you see some of the modules here. And I'll talk more about this. The slideshow works. Okay, that's working. You guys can see the screen, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So I have a TED talk on a global village construction set. Please see that. It's called Open Source Blueprints for Civilization. That's a good 4-minute intro, but I'll talk to you about this. So I came from Poland in 1982. That's the real scene. That's my hometown of Poznań. So that's tanks rolling down the street behind the Iron Curtain. Mom.
I heard the noise of the tanks when they were rumbling through the streets. That was a martial law later.
Yeah.
More.
So look at this. Mom, do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Waiting in line. So that's, we wait in line for food, for bread and stuff. And it was crazy time. So then came to America. This was a shock when I first saw that in Paterson, New Jersey. Amazing. Like 100 different brands of everything, whereas the shelves were like empty and all gray. And it was kind of grayish at the time, though it's beautiful right now. I mean, we're moving up. Poland's growing quite a bit. So got some education, went up to Princeton and Madison, Wisconsin, and discovered I was useless. So I wasn't learning practical things. The farther I was going, the more irrelevant I felt self-impressing world issues. So we started this farm in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. So that's the soybean field. You see the further you went in education. We had some, we were doing research in fusion energy. And I wasn't able to even talk to other people in other fusion groups openly because we had hot material. And if we reveal it, someone else might take it and run with it. So that's such a that's a sickness of society that we do not share the information openly and everyone just reinvents the wheel. I mean, that's my reality from the PhD program. Now, more than that, do all these theoretical classes. Yes, like that theory is real big equations stretching across the half the board. And then I asked the professor, well, what's this equation? We're studying some waves or whatever. And he said, oh, it doesn't exist. I just made it up. It's like people just start inventing things that don't necessarily correspond to reality while we have real problems to solve. So I had a big disconnect. So I'm like, none of this office cubicle or whatever traditional research career, that's what I was, geared to do. I said, no way, let's try to do something different. And how do you do that? Well, you got to start with some land, because land ultimately has all the resources that you need for a modern civilization, right? So you got rocks, sunlight, plants, soil, water. I mean, that's all the modern economy is made from that. What is that, little tractor there? It's steel. What is that? That's rocks out of the ground that are smelted and so forth with electricity or energy, a lot of energy. And we make that, but it's all like under our feet. That's the interesting part. So we're trying to say, okay, let's experiment with what can we do with open information to make prosperity available to anybody. Okay, because you saw Poland, when I came to America, it was like, well, how come it's so different in America? Like, why is this so abundant? I mean, you still have pretty much the same resources and, the resources I mentioned. I mean, some places might have more resources than other, but in essence, we all have resources, but it's the political, economic, social systems that instead of abundance for everybody, there's a lot of scarcity, war, and deprivation going on everywhere. Just like the comparison between the stocked shelves in America and the empty shelves in Poland. It's like, why is that this fundamental difference? So, when you think about that, you start asking questions. How do we make it better? Because so my father was a scientist. I always thought about good things to do with knowledge and technology, and how do we make it accessible to benefit of everybody? Okay, so that's our experiment. We started building things, machines like brick presses for making compressed earth blocks right here. So we published the plans online. People started to replicate. That's a first replication. Someone in Texas took our blueprints from the internet and did that. People downloaded our tractor and built that in Pasadena, California. People built a lot of our 3D printers, things like that. So what we did here was, when we started opening up the information, we started publishing everything and talking about how do we get a lot of different people and reduce skill levels, make things simple, just simple design, basic functionality. How can we build things rapidly? So we achieved, for example, a build of a compressed earth block press, which is a 1-ton machine, in a single day with 12 people. So we started to get really efficient at things, and that was like, wow, that's amazing. How do you do that? Well, we do a lot through modular breakdown. So you can break any technology down into small modules. You can work on them at the same time in parallel. Well, how does that apply in housing? So that's actually a good metaphor. We've built a lot of different houses. So that house, SH3 Seed Home 3, that was an example of what we do here. We build modules like that. Modules like you see all around this building is made of them. Oh yeah, but then actually we reused them and we built that house in Maysville and this very facility. So this is the picture of the facility here when it was being built. But I mean, the same module, we actually used a bunch of these modules that were in a big pile. We used them in this facility, so some of the walls here. And then we also used a lot of them in the house that's up for sale in Maysville right now that we built. So modular design. So if you have a huge team of people, you can do that all in parallel. We have the complete design. We can also put in the electrical, plumbing into the modules. We'll do some of that. We'll start with just the wood framing, but then we get into, we call it quad modules, quad for 4 things. So it's structural, just like you see here. There's mechanical components like heat pump or fans or whatever. Electrical, plumbing. Well, water. We can do all of that. When we build the modules, we can start building all those elements at the same time. So that once you build the structural modules, the so-called quad modules, you've already done your plumbing, electrical, water. And then you can make interconnections. So we do modularity at that level, so it can be parallel, built. Many things can be built in parallel, therefore very rapidly by larger teams. So that's what we'll be doing here. This is actually what the house that we're going to be building here. So 720 square feet. That's what the shell looks like, the frame. 46 modules total. If we had 100 people, we'd build all of this in half an hour. We don't have 100 people, we've got 10 people. So in principle, in about 10 hours, you can build all those modules. I mean, half an hour each. Well, half an hour for the simple ones, Like there's simple ones that are just like that, but like maybe the door ones, they maybe take an hour. And when you're starting out, it'll take you longer. So, you'll take 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. So there's a learning curve. Once you get the basic idea, you can build this pretty fast. And there's no limit to the scale of a building that you can build this way. So that's very interesting. We make it parallel, design for parallel build. Modularity. Instructionals. We try to make instructionals as easy as possible, make them language agnostic, simple diagrams. We talk about radical modularity in machines with their structures that are very modular, like Legos, power units that can be interchanged, wheel drive units. But what this allows us, this modularity allows us to get pretty rapid build time. So this is an example of how you can increase build speed. This is an iron worker machine. It's a thing that shears steel, like say 1x10 steel slabs, like to make tractors or heavy things. Well, we built this one here in about 6 months.
You shear 1 inch.
1 inch thick steel, a slab that's 10 inches long. This thing actually does 12 inches. We built it in 6 months. I said, wow, that's a long time. That was pretty gruesome. Like a lot of details, the curves and this and that, complicated design. So we said, okay, let's redesign it to a super simple thing out of the same box beam tubing. We built that thing in 2 days with a couple of people.
And it'll do the same thing.
It did 1x10 steel, and then we tried 1x12, and then that was destructive testing for that. But it did 1x10 steel, no problem. You've got this heavy blade, 1 inch thick blade that's hard steel. It's like a big scissor, and it cuts, and it does that. But you ask, okay, what's the simplest way you can design it? Well, just 2 arms and a pivot and the blade and the hydraulic cylinder, etc. And you can do the same. So you got to think a lot about design. How do you design things so they're easy? And there you go. And then we document at the same time. We learn how to document so that we can do instructionals for other people to do this. Like, for example, when we were building that, some guys were on the internet taking notes and drawing up the instructionals so that the instructional was done at the same time that we actually finished the build, which is important because a lot of times you don't get to capture all the information. So real-time documentation is important. Swarms. So we built this house. That's where I live. 50 people, 5 days. So that was good. To me, that was a major milestone. It's like, wow, 5 days. You got the whole shell up. We got the photovoltaics up. We did not do the inside. Right now, over the last 3 years, we really streamlined all the interior stuff, like efficient plumbing, electrical, water. How do you do that? I mentioned already, we put that into the modules as we build to make the process, like once you have the module, you already got electrical and plumbing. Wow. Otherwise, that would be a week. A plumber team comes in or whatever. So we're able to do that. 5 days. Well, so this is the Amish version of that. They get like hundreds of people to build a house in a single day and move it. There's like 600 Amish people moving that barn all together. So that's an example of collaborative work. That's the extreme. But we're doing like a practical Western version, like some people like the Amish and others, people know how to collaborate. And we're trying to say that, hey, let's do that for, like the Western world or the guys who control the world. Let's open up collaborative techniques as a feasible way to do things in society, as opposed to just big centralized production where you have a lot of capital requirements, proprietary information, and all that. Let's do it a different way, where you distribute that completely. So we talk about distributed economies. How do you distribute all that wealth to everybody in the world? All right. So yeah, we did more builds. That was 2015. Built aquaponic greenhouses. This is how I started, though, in my little mud hut. So we're known as the mud hut in this town. That's the workshop initially. We built with compressed earth blocks. This is a compressed earth block structure that's then clad with wood. You see the brick press and power cube in the back. There's a nice Kickstarter video you can take a look at for the Open Building Institute, where the promise was, instead of paying a whole bunch of money, like right now the average house is $400,000. Why not do a small, high-quality starter home for a budget that you can afford, like $40,000 in materials, because that's what this house cost. At that time, it was $40,000 in materials. Start with a small home, build up as you need it, as you need to, as your budget allows. That's called incremental housing. It's a concept, but that's what we do. You can solve your housing equation by doing exactly that. Start small and then expand as you grow. So we built CDECO homes. That was the first one. That's an aerial view of it right now with some solar panels. This was the second one. That's actually on this land right now. We can take a tour of that as well. That was the second one. That was the third one here that we just built and then disassembled for those modules as I showed you. The fourth one is that, and it's up for sale right now in Maysville. The fifth one is a build we started. We have a foundation laid in Savannah. So as part of the program, it's already there. You can look at Google Maps in Savannah. You'll see our foundation for that house. It's a larger version of the one we built in Maysville. And this is what we're building here. So, well, this is the starter home concept. This main picture here, that's what we're building. So it's a nice modern look house, 720 square feet. We're gonna put photovoltaics on it, all the systems. We're gonna do even a thermal battery, heat storage, photovoltaics on the roof, biodigester, where this time around we're not gonna collect gas, which you can do biodigester to process your waste and generate gas. We're not going to do that yet, but we're going to set it up for that. Without getting into too many details, this is the starter seed where you have the main sections here. You've got like a living room, kitchen area, and then there's a bathroom. We're going to build in one bathroom. It's actually set up, this other place is a second bathroom, so we're going to pre-plumb it for a second bathroom, but we'll just leave that open because that's just a small house. We don't need two bathrooms for a 720 square foot house. We're going to build out this front like that. Now this room here, that for now it's going to be a bedroom. It's a small bedroom, but in the full addition, it's actually going to turn into a corridor and a pantry because there's going to be a garage and two more bedrooms in this same house. So that's incremental housing. You can build up from a small core. You can build it up whatever direction. You can even go up on the roof if you want to add a second story if you like. It's all possible with this. In fact, this structure here, we plan on building more floors up on it. The walls here are structurally enough that we're going to go vertically on this house, this workshop right here as well. So, Future Builders Academy. Hey, the website is up, learn.opensourceecology.org. You can watch the promo video. So what's the promise? Learn how to learn. So based on my education, I don't think I really ever learned how to learn, but it's a super important skill that we're going to teach here. Learn how to solve problems. How do you become a problem solver? I mean, that's a lot of different skill sets in that. How to collaborate openly. So how to become part of a collaborative culture where there's enough for everybody as a fundamental principle. How to design and build just about anything. That's a big deal. That's what we offer. So, yeah. What else to talk about here? So, yeah, I mean, that's the, financial independence package. So what we're actually saying, and nobody really particularly signed up for this yet, but we're saying, okay, at our facility, you can come to this builder crash course like this, and then stay for another 6 weeks and build one of these to take home with you. So for 40,000 in materials, you can end up with a decent expandable home. That's the idea. And why financial independence? Because the home is the single highest cost of living in anybody's life. Over a lifetime, an average person, here's some of the stats, costs $1.2 million over one's lifetime just to put a roof over one's head. It's a lot of money. So think about if you solve that from the start and never got into the debt, that's a good idea. You provide a lot of freedom for a lot of people. So this is an aerial view of what we're doing right now. So this is taken just a couple of months ago. But this building here that we put that's now right here. That's where we are. That's the workshop. We're building this, all the modules which are stashed. We've got hundreds of modules back there. We've got all the materials to build a structure like this, very elongated. There's like 10 bays. This might show 11, but
Yeah, that shows 11.
yeah. If you're counting. It's 10 bays of 16 feet wide, 16 feet long, so it's 160 feet long by about 50. So basically like this, but super elongated, and the bays are, instead of 16, they're 8 feet. So using the same kinds of modules, roof trusses. We're actually going to use these kinds of roof trusses on a house. So that's that. You'll learn about that as well. And the idea there is we can build, inside the structure, we can build like 6 homes of the starter homes at the same time. So once people start signing up, because we start getting the word out and people start signing on, we can build 6 houses at a time in that facility. So we're not there yet, but we're getting there very soon. So maybe after the next builder crash course, which we're going to run every 2 months, we're going to do that. What else to talk about? Talk about the promise of open source. This is perhaps the best example. So we talked about open source design for just about anything. These guys in Germany have developed this open source MRI machine that can scan a brain. You can download the blueprints and build one of them for $50,000 instead of $1 million. How about that? That's good. The limits of open design are unlimited. There are no limits to what you can design. You can design complex things. And the idea is actually for us, by 2028, we want to finish the entire Global Village construction set. We'll see if we can do that. But after that, open source all of technology, which costs a lot of money. But it's about $50 billion. That's the price ticket for open sourcing everything in civilization. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So, including spaceships and microchips. So what's this $50 billion figure? Well, if you look at all the R&D that happens across corporations worldwide, people have R&D budgets, John Deere, whatever, Tesla, they have R&D budgets. That totals about $50 billion over a patent cycle. So here it is. Think about this. What's all the information in the world worth? Well, in 19 years, patents run out. So effectively what we're saying is that if you take all that R&D that took place over those 19 years in all the top corporations, that's like everything in society. So the $50 billion figure comes from saying, okay, how much did all the companies in the world spend in product research and development? And it's about $50 billion over the 19-year period. That's like peanuts compared to the size of the global economy.
How many individuals could afford that $10 billion?
Right. So there's a bunch of individuals that if they decided, they have billions, hundreds of billions, they could just say, hey, we're going to open source civilization and make prosperity available to anybody. People could do that. Well, there's not a lot of takers for that proposition right now in the mainstream world. So we're going to do that, and we aim to do that by about 2036 or so. That's our goal, 50 billion. But how do you do that? Well, earnings from open design. Like, for example, we can sell the houses, right? The houses are a pretty robust model where you can generate $50,000 to $100,000 per house. Huge. That's huge. So the goal with our program, 24 people build one of these houses in only 5 days. That's the goal of the 4-year program. That's insane. Nobody does that. Typical build cycles are 6 months. We're talking about, with everything else, organization, everything, maybe, a week or two cycle for popping out each house with a skilled crew of 24. So the goal of this apprenticeship here is to do exactly that. But if you can then run an operation like that, and we're training construction managers to do that, if you run a crew of 24, your revenue is $5 million a year. If you do that with 24 people, that's good. That's amazing. And that's like, I'm not talking about that's revenue, that's net revenue. Profit after all the costs. You're paying your people, selling houses on the open market, making good money. So that's our idea. We're going to scale this by bootstrapping, by earning the revenue. And we've shown it can be done. The houses work. I mean, the house is for sale right now, and we'll see how fast it sells. That will be like, once people see that, wow, it's sold, we made this much money, I think that'll be at the next level of reality check for our program and for the rest of the world. But we can do it together. I mean, $50 billion is actually like, it's peanuts compared to the $100 trillion economy of the world. It's less, it's a small fraction of a percent of the human effort. So the idea is, if we can teach people collaborative literacy, how do you collaborate openly with everybody else? How do you find the documents? How do you build upon all prior knowledge? That's what we're teaching in the program. How do you take all the knowledge that's out there and then contribute further to it in an open source way to make it available to anybody? That's the big picture. So let's see, what else to talk about here? I mean, that's really the equation that Alex, you mentioned. So this was, I did this was like from like a few years ago. What is that? 85 of the world's richest people had as much wealth as 3.5 billion people at the bottom of the pyramid. That was a few years ago. That did not improve. Look at this. It went the other way, actually. So today, look at the graph down here. It's even worse. So that was in about 2015 when I created that slide. We're in 2025, 8th in 2017. Like, that number is getting crazy. 8 people own as much wealth as half the world's population. So if we could get those guys to fund this, it would work. But they're not. No, that's not the thing, because we need an abundance mindset to say, hey, there's actually no fear of survival. We can actually share all this wealth. So that's the idea. The thing is, we're all in it together. We don't make any enemies. But the idea is about a global shift of consciousness towards the idea that there's enough for everybody. That fundamentally we get 10,000 times more power from the sun than we need. That means that you can process all the resources into abundance many times over what we have today. Like right now, people talk about, there's global warming, all these crises and all of this. In terms of fundamental resources that allow us to survive, there's just so much more available. Like, if you think about this, 10,000 times more power gets intercepted on the surface of the earth than a current economy uses. Like, all those fossil fuels that are burned over all this time, they're just a small fraction of what's available. Just to give you an example, how many days of solar energy to this planet are all of the fossil fuels equivalent to? If you do the math, that number happens to be about 10 days or about a week. So imagine like all the wealth of the richest billionaires and all that. That's just a little blip in terms of what we actually have available if we could use it. But we have solar panels. We can use solar energy. Like we're not 2,000 years ago when only plants could do that. Or a million years ago in the fossil fuels, whatever. When were fossil fuels born? Millions of years ago. You know, that's what we're using right now. But that's only worth like a week's worth of current energy that we could use. Okay, so there's 10,000. Well, how efficient are solar panels? They're like 10%. So right there you have 1,000 times more than we can use, you know, which means a small fraction of the Earth's surface could power all the world. And then people say, oh well, you know, you have intermittency, the sun doesn't shine at night. That's where you get into things like how do you address that? People talk about batteries. In this program, we talk about thermal batteries because a lot of the electricity, in fact, 70% of the world's electricity is heating and cooling and hot water. So what if you store that and then therefore you have automatically eliminated about 70% of the world's electricity use? Anyway, there's a lot of different solutions we can talk about, but the fundamental cause here, the state of the world is the fundamental state of abundance, and that's what the entire population misses. You know, everyone competes. We have patents and proprietary trade secrets as the way to do business, which is from first principles pretty crazy. So if you just start asking questions and say, well, what's really possible? You see that a lot of different things, different world is possible for everybody. So let's see, what else? Well, but that culture does not exist. Open source, this kind of logic is very, very rare. Very, very tiny fraction of the entire world system. So anyway, I think I'll leave it at that, and let's start to build some things. So the goal is to finish the 720 square foot house. We're going to put it on a little pad right here. And Suzanne Sperry has been talking about. Suzanne, are you going to buy that house? Or she's actually thinking about buying that house.
So I want to buy a house. It's actually the Little Bend Acres campus is going to buy the house and put it on the campus and have it be as one of our flexible infrastructure that not only can onboard people as they are building properties, but they can also, because of its modular design, it can serve multiple purposes at different times. For example, it can be expanded and create more housing as a unit itself, but it can also serve as the common room where the utilities are for cabins and other like sleeping quarters, because sleeping is easy, right? Putting something up, a little bunkhouse, a little cabin for people to sleep in, that's easy. The building that needs the flexible sanitation, water, and electricity, heating and cooling, all of those things. That's why we're buying this. We want to learn how to build it so that we can learn how to maintain it, and then also expand it as needed and make repairs. So
I love it.
Yes.
And all the systems in there are scalable, like from the waste treatment to the electricity to the heating and cooling. So yeah, we're there. So what do we do right now? Let us start, but let's what time we got right now? 9 o'clock. We're good. So let's do this. We'll get right into the build. So without, get you building things right away.